Hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for being here for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. First graphic here is showing the 24-hour precip amounts, and the blue shaded areas are showing near or greater than half an inch in the last 24 hours. Of course, that's in the upslope areas, southern Cook Inlet there into the Kamishak Bay area and along the upslope areas of the Aleutian Range. Also look like maybe a little bit of Kodiak Island there in the southwest mountains, seeing a quarter to maybe half an inch of rain. And then also up over the DeLong Mountains, Western Brooks Range, a fair amount of precipitation as well. And a lot of the southwest part of the state on down across the Seward Peninsula to Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet, western Susitna Valley. Of course, Prince William Sound seeing some rainfall. So, and a distinct lack of rainfall over the central eastern part of the state from Copper River Basin on up to the North Slope. So taking a look at the fire weather index, and what this is, it gives an estimation of the potential fire danger and fire behavior, and is based on the moisture content of the three classes of surface forest fuels plus the effect of wind on fire behavior. And you can see the red areas there around the greater Fairbanks area and on the lee side of the Alaska Range and off to the southwest a little bit, and then kind of covering the widespread area of the upper Yukon Valley there, and also in the Copper River Basin. And that mostly due to the gusty winds that today, Gulf Canada seeing gusts 30 miles an hour. And for the hazardous weather graphic here, these are the shaded areas here for the upper Yukon Valley. That's a fire weather watch for Friday afternoon and evening, tomorrow afternoon and evening, for temperatures in the 70s, humidities down around 15% with 15-mile-an-hour winds. So kind of breezy, so there could be possibly extreme fire dangers there if those conditions pan out. And there is currently a red flag warning for the north slopes of the eastern Alaska Range. Through the pass especially, gusts to 45 miles an hour and relative humidities in the lower 20s today. That's out until 10 p.m. this evening, and dry conditions there. So very extreme fire danger in the windy areas for the eastern Alaska Range till 10 p.m. tonight. Conditions improve. Moving on to the breakup map for the 21st of May. You can see the Colville River still mostly ice, as well as the Kapparik, and seeing some open areas now along the Sagwan River. In fact, actually upper reaches there are mostly open until you hit the unknown zone, and then mostly open along the Noatak River and most of the Kobuk River as well. And the remainder of the rivers south, Yukon, Kuskokwim, of course all the others are past breakup now. And taking a look at satellite imagery here for today, you can see front weakening, kind of breaking up as it moves into the southwest interior. Still a lot of clouds, and that's streaming northward all the way to the western Arctic coast, with mixed precipitation occurring at Wainwright on down to Point Lay and into the northwest there. And with Kodiak Island also picking up some rain today in the front, as we saw in the precip amounts. Main low center back over the western Aleutians there, kind of generating another trough, another area of enhanced precipitation and breezy conditions, winds 30-35 miles an hour, and gusts occurring across the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Clouds covering much of the Bering Sea, as well as the Aleutians. That low pretty much dominating the entire area out there. Showers over the Pribilofs, low clouds and fog most everywhere else. There is light rain and drizzle. And windy conditions ahead of that front. As I mentioned, gusts 30 miles an hour at Gulf Canada today, while Palmer had gusts to 35 miles an hour. And actually, 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts also recorded at Gulf Canada, with winds up around 40 miles an hour early this afternoon at Delta Junction there, where the red flag warning is out for the Alaska Range. You can see mostly sunny, temperatures into the lower 70s by early afternoon over the eastern interior. Beaver and Eagle, for example, about 72 degrees, with 60 showing up. Much cooler in the clouds and rain to the west, and mostly in the upper 50s to lower 60s for the southeast coast. So there were a few showers around earlier today over the southern panhandle, and those have pretty much ended, or mostly isolate over into Canada now. On the chart, you can see the rain on the southern Kenai Peninsula on up into western Prince William Sound. Light rain. Valdez had about 0.03 of an inch in the last 24 hours, so nothing heavy. Winds gusting to 45 miles an hour at Portage Glacier, and winds gusting 30 miles an hour at the at Anchorage International Airport. See a band of rain across all the southwest interior up to the Seward Peninsula, showers over the Bering Sea with nothing but clouds with that huge low pressure area that's tracking eastward along and just north of the Aleutians. Moving on to the forecast for tonight, that low continues to drift eastward, slowing down a little bit there, still northwest of Nikolsky. Look for unsettled conditions over all of the Bering Sea, clouds, light rain, drizzle, areas of fog, widespread IFR expected all the way up to the Bering Strait. And along that trough axis, rain or snow showers with areas of fog for the Bering Strait on up into the northwest Arctic coast, and a few flurries still possible on the western Arctic coast with areas of fog and IFR expected across all of the Arctic coast and North Slope. Mostly VFR, though, south of the Brooks Range into the eastern interior. Mostly clear, actually, and continued breezy winds diminishing toward midnight and after there for the windier areas. And it looks like rainfall chances increase here, North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula area, Prince William Sound. Even in the northern Cook Inlet, possibly the Susitna Valley, lesser chances in the Madanuska Valley, and mostly cloudy over the southeast coast, and rain changing to or tapering off to a few showers, but don't look for much clearing for Kodiak Island. And the outlook for Friday tomorrow, partly sunny over the northern panhandle, increasing clouds, chance of rain on the north and central coast late in the afternoon as that front tries to push eastward. Periods of light rain continue for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Mostly cloudy, northern Cook Inlet, Madanuska, Susitna Valley, with the shower chances mostly northwest and west over toward the Alaska Range of the Susitna Valley, with periods of light rain, southern Cook Inlet again, Kamishak Bay, Iliamna, showers Kodiak Island, mostly cloudy, and showers pretty widespread or areas of light rain and showers and clouds from the Seward Peninsula across the lower Yukon River Valley, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta into the mountainous areas of Bristol Bay. And a weak low and another front that develops out of that trough brings occasional light rain to the Alaska Peninsula. And the second low, 989 millibars there northwest or north of Nikolsky, a couple of troughs swinging around that. Look for showers and gusty northwest winds for the Aleutians. And for the first day of the weekend, looks wet for the southeast coast as well as the North Gulf Coast. Periods of rain. Could get a little brisk on the central and south coast with tighter gradient ahead of that front, with light rain into Prince William Sound. Chance of showers south central Alaska. Maybe a few sun breaks possible, but that'll occur in northern Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin. All of the eastern interior dry, partly mostly sunny, highs in the 70s, and low clouds, fog for the Arctic coast and North Slope. Western part of the state, clouds, cooler, showers, actually from the Koyukuk Valley westward to the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, the northwest coast. Another trough brings areas of light rain, fog along the southwest coast there and into Kodiak Island. Yet another trough keeps it damp and unsettled over the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, and breezy conditions with low clouds, rain, and fog. Again, pretty widespread across all of the Bering Sea to the Bering Strait and the Aleutian chain. Looking at low temperatures for tonight, lower to mid-20s for the Arctic coast and North Slope, with lower to mid-30s for the Brooks Range south of the mountains, mid-40s into the central interior, lower 40s as you head out toward the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area as well as Bristol Bay, and then mid-30s along the coast for the Pribilof, same thing. Near 40 for the Aleutians on average, lower 40s Alaska Peninsula, and also mostly in the 40s for the Panhandle, as well as southern Alaska. Highs tomorrow, 50s for southern Alaska, Bristol Bay, lower 50s Kodiak Island, 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, mid-40s for the Pribilofs. North of the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, up into the upper Yukon Valley, highs 70 to 80, and a little cooling as you head west with more clouds and moisture. Looks like most of the Arctic coast forecast to push above freezing tomorrow, with Barrow pushing up to about 33, 50s to upper 60s, warmest over the northern panhandle, coolest along the coast and to the south. Lows for Saturday morning, mid-20s, Arctic coast north slope in the 40s in the interior, followed by afternoon highs in the 70s again. Not much change, 75 to 80 for the eastern central interior areas, and upper 50s to lower 60s for south central Alaska. Southeast coast, anywhere from upper 50s to upper 60s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
All right, first line weather graphic for Friday morning. IFR, North Slope Arctic coast, on down through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island there, covering most areas of the Bering Sea as well as the Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula. IFR up across Kodiak Island, Gulf of Alaska, southern Kenai Peninsula into Prince William Sound, and eastward to the coastal areas of the Panhandle. VFR, Lincoln Glacier Bay, marginal VFR, southern Alaska, a little bit of IFR maybe on the southern or the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range and over the southwest mountains. Otherwise, the interior, pretty good VFR, Copper River Basin included. And then for the afternoon, improvement, still marginal VFR along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range on down across Kamishak Bay, inland areas of Bristol Bay, and still widespread IFR, Bering Sea Aleutians, and pulling off the coast now, but still over the Gulf of Alaska. A little bit of marginal VFR, say from Port Alexander on down the coast of Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, the inland areas looking pretty good with VFR. And no change for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Interior, mostly VFR. For Saturday morning, IFR once again, North Slope, Arctic coast, and right on down through the Bering Strait, across St. Lawrence Island, Pribilofs, and the western side of Nunivak Island, Koriak, mostly marginal. Yukon Delta, VFR, right up the river there, all the way to the border. Tanana Valley, also VFR. Cook Inlet, Madanuska Valley, Susitna Valley, most likely will be VFR on down across Kamishak Bay there to Fognak Island. And then just south of Fognak Island, we've got IFR and over from Kodiak State Airport, Ozinki on down to Sitkinak, south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And the Gulf of Alaska, once again, and the North Gulf Coast into central Prince William Sound, looks to be IFR for the morning hours. And then for the afternoon, conditions deteriorate across the southeast coast, especially down south with IFR there and along the coast, marginal VFR elsewhere. IFR, North Gulf Coast, some marginal VFR into the Coast Range and possibly the Wrangell Mountains, trying to get into the Copper River Basin. Northern Cook Inlet stays VFR as well as Madanuska Susitna Valley, but marginal VFR on down the inlet and some IFR holding over Kodiak Island, North Slope Arctic coast, and more the IFR a little more broke up now out over the Bering Sea with some areas of marginal VFR showing up. And for the passes Anatuvik and Adigan, both starting out marginal, becoming VFR late morning into the afternoon. And for the western Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Merrill, pretty good, kind of marginal for both passes there throughout the day. Rainy, occasionally marginal at some point in the day tomorrow. And for windy on Friday, should be optimistically VFR with Isabel. Same forecast, good VFR, will be VFR from Antasta, Tanita, VFR for sure. Portage though, IFR possible eastern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 8,000 feet with some upper level ridging near the eastern border there, just north of the Alaska Range, Upper Tanana Valley area, and we've got 4,000 feet, 6,000 feet up to the eastern Arctic coast, 2,000 feet out over the Bering Sea, and roughly about 6,000 over the Panhandle and 4,000 over southwest Alaska. Icing, southeast flow, bringing a fair chance of considerable moderate rime icing of freezing level 10,000 feet there, Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound, and scattering out to more of an isolated possible mixed type icing over the western interior and the Alaska Peninsula. Jet stream, weak upper level ridging over the eastern border there, associated with that higher freezing level area. And we got southeast winds 80 knots cutting across Kodiak and northeast Bristol Bay or into Kamishak Bay. Otherwise, the main Pacific jet staying south of the area. 9,000 feet, low pressure tracking eastward right along the Aleutian chain. Midday tomorrow near Nikolsky. Another weak low up off the western Arctic coast. Southeast winds 40 knots coming across the Kenai Peninsula Cook Inlet area and 45 knots approaching the Alaska Peninsula. 3,000 feet, same pattern, but lighter winds. Still southeast winds pulling the moisture into the North Gulf Coast as well as the Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence, occasional moderate chop there for the Alaska Peninsula, turning an arm and out over the central Aleutian areas. Otherwise, light to isolated moderate chop there for the Aleutian Range, much of south central Alaska, Prince William Sound. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Corvids are super smart birds. You know, ravens, crows, magpies. They can recognize and remember faces. They can form communities. They even use tools. One of these is in the sky, Corvus. The story goes that Apollo sent Corvus to grab some water in a chalice. But the wandering warbler stopped to wait for a fig to ripen, yum, and eventually Corvus realized he had to hurry back. So he grabbed a snake to blame for the delay, but he forgot the chalice. Apollo was not super happy and doomed Corvus to the skies. So look for Spica in the south around 10 p.m. Corvus looks like a sail to the right of Spica, and the chalice is to his right, just out of reach, and Hydra is the long snake meandering off and to the west. I'm Trace Dominguez. Definitely enjoy these spring constellations while you keep looking up.
We're at Vandenberg Air Force Base for about 20 minutes before the launch of ICESat-2. You might see the white light off in the distance. That's the Delta II rocket.
It kind of feels like an idea that was always going to just stay an idea. But no, it's real. It's sitting on top of the rocket.
You know, and for me, it's kind of surreal. Like you say, it's been 10 years and it's hard to believe. It's like, we're really here? This is really about to happen? It's totally cool.
This is Dr. Tom Newman. Over the years, his work has taken him to some pretty remote areas to study changes in the ice regions of our planet. And his research, among many others, has defined the goals of the new NASA satellite, the Ice, Cloud, and Land Elevation Satellite 2, or ICESat-2.
And we have ignition. And
the story of ICESat-2 really begins with ICESat-1. ICESat told us all kinds of cool things about the ice sheet and about sea ice that we didn't really know to ask. That data allowed us to measure elevation change of ice sheets in a way that we hadn't been able to before, and showed that all the action on the ice sheets, the places that were really changing quickly, were around the edges. So when we were thinking about what could we do better next time, we knew that was one key component.
In addition to the edges of the ice sheets, ICESat-2 needed to measure a dimension of sea ice that remained elusive: its thickness. To figure out how thick sea ice is, you can measure the height of ice sticking out of the ocean, or freeboard, and compare it to the height of water between the sea ice flows, called leads.
The problem is, sea ice is really dynamic, and those cracks open and close various places in the ice pack throughout the day, throughout the year, and what we need to do is have measurements of the ocean whenever it's available, wherever it occurs in the sea ice pack.
To solve that problem, ICESat-2 was designed with a fast pulsing laser instrument to take precise, near-continuous measurements across its 3 pairs of beams. For 10 years, everything about the mission was designed to measure rapid changes in the most rapidly changing part of the cryosphere. But it has to get into space first.
But it's a huge transition going from the ground to in space. We've spent better part of 10 years, thousands of people have been involved, and actually seeing the rocket there on the pad with all of that work kind of all put together in one place, it's pretty amazing. And then getting up in the middle of the night to go watch the actual launch, it's sort of surreal in a way, because you've put so much time into it for so long, and actually seeing it over there is like, whoa, you know, it's a big deal.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Lift off. Lift 1.
it went. That was Atlas. Last Delta II, heading on out. So Atlas has been turned on over the course of the first few weeks of the mission, really culminating for us with a laser. So this is our first look at sea ice data from ICESat-2, and it looks fantastic. The signal levels look great. We've got plenty of photons there. We're capturing ridges. We can clearly see the ocean. All sorts of cool stuff in there, and this is just our first data. It's only going to get better from here on out.
The data from ICESat-2 is well on its way into digging deeper into the unknown dimensions of sea ice sheets, and glaciers. It will shed light on changes in sea level and global weather patterns, and once again find new things about ice we didn't know to ask.
So my heart is definitely racing. I don't know about anyone else's. This is the stuff nerds dream of.
Slight chance the flight may see ICESat-2 in their center windscreen. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, really thinning out now along all of the Yukon Delta coastline and even south of St. Lawrence Island, but still quite an area of heavier ice holding over western Norton Sound, with areas of heavier ice up into the Bering Strait. And conditions will continue to slowly melt and deteriorate as far as ice goes for the next 4 or 5 days. For the coastal waters of the Panhandle, look for south to southeast winds at 20 knots on the south coast, seas 7 feet. East southeast 20 to 25 knots with 8-foot seas on the north coast. Inside waters, mostly southerly, all areas 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. Moving on to Saturday, small craft advisories for Clarence Strait. Winds kick up to 25 knots from the southeast as seas build to 8 feet. Otherwise, south to southeast 15 knots. Central northern inside waters, seas around 3 feet. And 30-knot winds from the south on the south coast, seas building to 12 to 13 feet, and east-southeast winds increasing to 30 knots for the north coast with 13-foot seas. Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds at 20 knots, seas 4 feet. East 25 for the North Gulf Coast, 9-foot seas. Northeast 20 for Cook Inlet. Much brisker, though, for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories there for easterlies at 30 knots and the Barren Islands south at 20. For Saturday, Prince William Sound, east winds 20 knots. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, easterlies 25 to 30 knots with 8-foot seas. And small craft advisories for southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay for east winds at 25 knots for Kamishak Bay, northeast 25 for southern Cook Inlet, north of the Forelands, northeast to 20 with 3-foot seas. Kodiak Island, east-southeast tomorrow, 15 knots, seas on the Pacific side, 8 feet. And from Sitkinak all the way down to Cape Sarachev, small craft advisories, southeast winds, pretty uniform, at 25 knots. And Bering Sea side of the peninsula, east 25, Bristol Bay southeast at 20. And for Bristol Bay on Saturday, east winds at 20 knots. East winds also for Shelikof Strait at 20, and south 20 knots for the east side of Kodiak Island. And for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast 15 to 20 knots, strongest on the Pacific side of the peninsula, where seas will be 8 feet. And for the western Aleutians, small craft advisories, northwest winds coming around the backside of that low center at 25 knots with seas near 10 feet. Adak and Atka northwest at 20 with 6 to 10 foot seas. Eastern Aleutians west to northwest at 15 to 20 knots with seas running 5 to 11 feet. And for Unalaska Island, on Saturday, west winds 20 to 25 knots, strongest on the southern side of the island with 8-foot seas. And for Unmak Island, southwest 20 to 25 knots, Adak and Atka westerlies 20 to 25 knots, and 20 to 25 knot winds also for the western Aleutians. Southwest coast, strongest winds will be along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline east at 25 for small craft advisories there. Yukon Delta coast east at 15. Same thing for the Pribilofs, east 15 knots. Northeast 20 for St. Matthew Island. Northeast 15 for St. Lawrence Island. And for Saturday, northeast winds 15 knots. Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down the Yukon Delta coast. And for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, east at 20. North 15 for the Pribilofs. North 20 for St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast over to Demarcation Point, brisk wind advisory tomorrow, east winds 25 knots. Otherwise, for the eastern and central coast, winds will be about 20 knots from the east, lighter on the west side, east at 15. Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, north 20, seas 2 feet. Cape Thompson to Wales, northeast at 15. Those will swing around to the south, same speed on Saturday, and easterlies 15 knots from Cape Thompson up the west side along the western coast. Central coast east 20, brisk wind advisories, kind of general increase in the winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 25 to 30 knots for Saturday. For tonight, possible flurries, fog, western Arctic coast, showers diminishing there for Kobuk Valley, Selawik, Kotzebue, Seward Peninsula. Periods of rain, southern Alaska, increasing clouds on the Panhandle. Low clouds, fog, rain, drizzle. Sums it up for the next 2 days for the Bering Sea and Aleutians. Chance of rain continues for the North Gulf Coast. And then the first day of the weekend looks wet for the Panhandle and North Gulf Coast. Sunny and warm over the eastern interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.